Hello and welcome to another video here at Baldwin's Auctions. I'm Oscar Young, and you may have seen some of my previous videos, and in fact this is a remake of the first ever video that I did all the way back I think in 2020, and it was looking at how we value a collection. So we'll look at this album here, which is all Great Britain. And as you can see, immediately they've done this wonderful sort of frontispiece in a wonderful font and design there. And we'll start turning the pages, and it's, again, very nicely written up, very well placed and even and neat. We've got the two mole readies here. We've got a third mole ready here as well. And then we've also got a write-up to describe the stamps and things. We've got some pre-stamped material here. And then other postmarks and items of interest, and of course the original collector has pointed out particular marks and things which are of interest to the collector. And then we come onto the stamps. Again, a very nice write-up. We've got a penny black, a much nicer than one we've previously seen, a nice used pair of Tuppenny blues, used on the original piece of the envelope, and of course been very lovingly hinged into the album on a piece of black card. We've got another one there, not as nice as the one up top, but this obviously must have been a gem in their original collection. And we've also got an illustration of the watermark, and as we carry on, it's got more information about stamps. It's got types of cancellations on here as well, some identification of the plates again. So immediately we can see that this collection has been much more well sort of organized and laid out. And something like this, when we're looking through it in an initial sort of consultation with someone who may have brought it in, we can give them an indication of what it's worth, but it's probably something we'd have to sit down and sort of go through in meticulous detail, as the collector has done here, identifying plate numbers and certain varieties and other items of interest, to be able to get back to them with a much more firm figure with regards to an estimate and how we'd like to proceed. So overall, this sort of album, which I've previously valued prior to this, had done a Blue Peter job, and the whole collection of this one, which extends into other volumes of all Great Britain, is some thousands of pounds. I think it's touching about £5,000 for the whole collection. This album itself is about 1,500 to 2,000. So immediately, it's the time and the effort that placed into this album, more conscious purchasing and building a collection up slowly, but buying particular areas, completing sets, looking at varieties and buying nice quality. That's really pay off. Quality in this album isn't necessarily the best, but it was probably what we would sort of term as an older time collection, where they just bought whatever came their way. The next album we're going to look at is a Falkland Islands collection, very popular collecting area. And this collection was made up in, say, I believe about 30 odd 40 years ago, and is slightly more minimalist in its detail and write-up. It's predominantly just the physical stamps with the old printed labels you used to be able to buy. The original collector has gone through and tried to collect the vast majority of his collection as mint. That's what he preferred, whereas in the previous collection it was a mixture of mint and used. And he's gone through and bought all the ones he needed from the respective shades, and he has also, as you may note, put the old catalogue prices with the stamps. Now this is quite a common practice, but we always do say to people as a disclaimer, sometimes the prices that collectors may have originally noted by their stamps are not always reflective of their current market value. So going through this collection, it's a nice collection. Overall, everything is in fairly decent condition. There are a few that have pinged off the hinges, which does happen, and that does happen with over time. We do put them back on if they do come off. He has been very conscious about what he's been buying. Again, as I said, quality is quite good. He's also made sure to buy the slightly more expensive ones. So he's got the pound stamp there. Also, we've got 5 shilling that's just pinged off there. I'll have to hinge that back later. But he's gone through, collected all the respective shades, usually by the catalogue listings, and has created his collection stamp by stamp, or possibly bought them all as a set, and has placed them in his album this way. And he's gone through, done all the different types and this chronological order and such things. The gem of his collection is this set here, which is probably one of the iconic sets of the British Empire, and that's the Falkland Islands centenary set with the very popular and ever adorable Falkland Islands penguin, the majestic portrait of King George V there. Now, most of the time when you see this set, you do not see the three top values. Most people can only afford up to the 2 and 6. And so without these sort of three values, your centenary set can be in as nice condition as it like, but it's not necessarily as valuable as it would be, say, with these particular stamps. So this page on its own is £1,000 because of the Falkland centenary set, and overall this album here is about £2,500. So it's again a much more sort of cultured and more concise collection. It's been very particular about quality, and it's also made sure to, in a way, invest and buy those bigger stamps. And of course, not every collector can afford those, but in a sort of a business and a dealer sense, we're looking for these bigger sets. And when I get round to breaking up this collection, this particular set would be taken out and offered as a separate lot, as these can, in a way, do justify them being themselves on a separate lot, and they won't damage the value of the collection if I was to remove them, as there is already enough value in here for the collection to be a standalone collection and for these to be their own separate lot. Lastly, we're going to look at probably another very popular album range, and that is known as the printed album. Now, this is a very old King George VI album. I think it's 3rd edition from top of memory, and these types of albums, there used to be the new ideals, the ideal albums, the old imperial albums, and the new imperials. And the idea was that you could collect the whole entirety of the world, the British Empire, or particular areas, or in this case, the whole Commonwealth, according to George VI. And you'd have allotted spaces in this album for all the relevant issues that were done. So we'll look at Barbados just because I was on that page, and it's got a lot of spaces for all the stamps. Now, when you're looking through these printed albums, the degree of how complete they are is often an indicator of value, and often you will see gaps, particularly where the rarer stamps are. This is a primary example. We're looking at Burma. So the first issue of Burma, when it attained its own postal administration, issued its set of stamps overprinting on the existing Indian stocks that were available, and the stamps that you never see are, of course, the 10, the 15, and 25 rupee, the 25 rupee being the top value of the set. Now, if that set was complete, in varied degrees of condition, it could be hundreds or maybe even touching the thousands. So again, those three there are 90% of the value of that particular set. Carrying on through this album, it is generally sort of around about 65 to 70% complete. It hasn't got some of the major rarities, as we were saying, going through, and hasn't got some of the better sets. It has got representative examples of most stamps. Most of it is filled up. So we've got from Hong Kong here with the different shades and such things, and the different types of the dollars, particularly the 5 and the 10. His $10 isn't that particularly that nice. It's a bit toned, but it's still that good $10. The Indian states don't necessarily fill in all the gaps, but it has got most of the stamps. Also, in some areas, which on this page of India, he has completed the set, but one value is suspiciously different, and that's the 15 rupee, and that is used. So it can't be a complete set of mint. It's a complete set, but one is used. And that doesn't make it any less of a set, but it's not as desirable as, say, a complete use set or a complete mint set in that sense. Having one value that's odd from the others does tend to put people off. But the original collector may not have ever come across a mint version of the 15 rupee. So overall, what is this album worth? Now, as we said, it's got a fairly high degree of completion. It doesn't have some of the rarer sets. Condition is generally fair to fine, as we would summarize it. So some of them are not as in nicer condition, some of it's a little bit nicer. It's all predominantly mounted, and George VI prices for mounted mint are not necessarily as high as unmounted, which is where they haven't been used with hinges, but still collectible area, desirable area. Overall, this particular album is between sort of £6,000 and £7,000. So as a whole group and collection, it's collectively worth quite a lot more, but there are no items which really are standout or standalone. It has better areas, but doesn't necessarily have gems in it, as say this particular album does, i.e. in the centenary set. This one is a general collection that is really a sort of one that would be a work in progress for someone to buy it, and then with the view to completing it. Well, thank you for sticking around for both parts of this video. It is a long one and it is a lot of detail to take in, but stamp collections are not the easiest things to value. You can often see these types of albums on a very much a daily basis, and indeed 90% of my time is valuing these types of collections when I see them coming through the shop here at Stanley Gibbons and Baldwin's, or going out and visiting people on shows across the country and indeed the world. And of course, stamp collecting is one of those hobbies where it's so inclusive that anyone can collect stamps regardless of budget, but in the commercial sense there's a very small percentage which are ones touching the hundreds and indeed some thousands of pounds. And I hope that this gives you a visual guide as well as some general advice into how we approach valuing stamp collections and what to expect when you come in for a valuation, whether it be with a Triumph album from a loved one, or you are the collector yourself with an album such as this and looking for some advice, whether it be for initial sale or for planning one's legacy. And as always, I hope that we here at Stanley Gibbons and in Baldwin's can be of assistance to collectors and indeed the families of collectors, or those people who've come across a stamp collection, whether they've inherited it or maybe they've just found one and took a punt on it and thought, let's just show the experts and see what they can do. And as always, please like and subscribe for more Baldwin's content.